G'day guys, we're back at Beach City Life on Facebook, and I have Mark Paddenburg from Innovation Sunshine Centre Sunshine Coast, and you're the CEO there. What do you guys do up there?
The Innovation Centre is all about supporting entrepreneurs and innovators on the Sunshine Coast, and there's a lot of them. We've been around since 2002, so we're celebrating our 15-year anniversary. We've had over 182 innovators and entrepreneurs in the centre over that time. We've helped raise $33 million for those companies. They've employed over 780 people, put $60 million in salary into the Sunshine Coast up until 2015, between 2002 and 15. So they're certainly having an impact, and a lot of those entrepreneurs are growing, they're globalising, and I've got my dream job.
Excellent. So you started this yourself, and is it government funded in any way?
It's a wholly owned entity of the University of the Sunshine Coast. Colin Graham was the initial CEO. I took over in 2012. And the model's working really well. We've got now food accelerator programs. We're going to have a health, wellbeing, medical type accelerator later in the year. We've got a range of innovative members in clean tech, professional services, digital, even disability services, a range of entrepreneurs, and food and agribusiness growing. Health, wellbeing aligns with our region too, so it's pretty exciting at the moment.
What's the diversity of age like?
Yeah, good question. The average founder, the age of the average founder will be about 38 to 40, so there's a little bit of grey hair in there, but we're seeing a lot of younger millennials coming through, students, and so I think that average age will finally start to decline. We'll see more women in there too, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd have to ask, being on the Sunshine Coast, and I imagine you've travelled a bit as well.
I have. I've certainly travelled through Europe and worked in London for a while. I've worked in Beijing and grew up in Melbourne. Sunshine Coast, there's no better place. And people like Bernard Salt, Mark Souby that we were just talking to, recognise that something's happened in the last 5 to 10 years on the Sunshine Coast. It's becoming a destination of choice for entrepreneurs. There's always been a lot there, and I think as the baby boomers, empty nesters realise that Melbourne, Sydney and even Brisbane, there's a lot of alternate options for them, and the Sunshine Coast will attract a lot of those people.
Yeah, beautiful. And there's been a healthy rivalry because I'm from the Gold Coast, and I want to say that the Gold Coast is the same, but I think it's healthy, that rivalry. What do you think?
Oh, look, absolutely. I think Brisbane is the winner. They're fortunate. They've bookended it by Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast. And, I spent 5 years growing up on the Gold Coast as well and learnt to surf there. Love the Gold Coast. And the Sunshine Coast is very different. You've got the 17 villages. There's a little bit more green space. And they're different, which is great. And I think that choice and the diversity is a good thing for Southeast Queensland. I personally think globally we really should be positioning this region as SEQ, Southeast Queensland, Paris, London, those big cities. They're really 300-400 kilometre type zones.
And so the green spaces, the beaches, how important do you think that is, to, I guess, indulge in immersing yourself in those kinds of places to be successful in business?
Well, I think they are places where people can do their creative thinking, brainstorming, recharge their batteries. I've spent a lot of time in capital cities, and that stress around the traffic and the grind does wear entrepreneurs down, and we hear that the entrepreneurs had the surf in the morning, their brain's fresh, they're thinking, they're focused on the business, and they have that flexibility. So I think it's a key thing about supporting entrepreneurs and their families.
Yeah. So are gone are the days 9 to 5?
They are. If the surf's up, some of our founders will be surfing. But that said, they'll be there till midnight, or they'll be there working on the weekends. The Innovation Centre's open 24/7, and we've got 300 meg fibre connections, and they're communicating with their customers in America and Europe at all sorts of hours. So entrepreneurs here are born global, so we must be connecting at all hours.
And so that also reminds me that we should be enjoying the journey. Not waiting
Absolutely.
waiting for 10 years for us to feel like we've reached a milestone, and now we can relax and put our feet up, or if we want to, or get out there and lose that weight that we gained over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, would you say you're an entrepreneur yourself? Have you?
Yeah, look, I've been involved in 2 startups and advising hundreds of startups, and was very fortunate in my young year at the university and other places working with entrepreneurs that already started their tech startups. So I totally agree that the journey, it's a long and arduous journey, lots of ups and downs. So I think when you look at the startups in, say, Silicon Valley, they have a massive celebration when they hit their milestones, and I think Queenslanders are a little bit more modest in celebrating those wins. They might do a quick high five and then moving on to the next task. That's great, but we've got to spend the time to reward the founder and the team and say, hey, well done, we've made some progress, and enjoy the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you had to, give yourself a call 20 years ago, I'm not sure if that's, if you're that old, but...
Note yourself.
What would be some advice you would give yourself around this space?
Think bigger, bolder, do it faster, back yourself early. Don't leave that great idea too long. Just as Mark Sauby and others say, just start, just get going. Steve Baxter as well. Get that idea, take it to market, build a team around it, and be bold and think really big.
On the back of a lot of startups basically starting because they've had an idea and they've gotten funding, or they. What's your advice around? I'm the entrepreneur. I've got no resources. I can't get funding. Should I still have a crack?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely, and to leave the funding as long as you can. Really prove to yourself and your team that you have got something that stands out from the crowd, that is competitive. Test it out, get that minimal viable product. Really thrash it out before you take any money if you can. Get into revenue before you take money, and the best money that you can raise is through revenue from your customers. I personally believe that the startups, some of them spend too much time chasing the investment when they should be putting that time and effort into their company, building customers, building traction. Take the money to do the hockey stick, build that scale and the J curve, and that's how you can deploy your capital most effectively. And how are we faring in terms of innovation in Australia? Are we red, amber, or a green light at the moment? I think we're still in the amber, heading towards green. Things have improved a lot. There's a lot of entrepreneurs. The tax policy is a lot better. The funding is easier to access, and easier to access in America as well. We're certainly competitive on the innovation, the skills, the thinking. As a location, there's still more work to be done by government as well. Advanced Queensland's been excellent on the Sunshine for Queensland and the Sunshine Coast. The Oz industry funding the new NISA, National Innovation Science Agenda, is excellent. What we need, though, is all politicians from both sides to commit to long-term policies and plans and support for innovators over a 5-10 year period, not the political cycle. The startups I talk to, they're really over the politics. They want long-term certainty and planning, and that's what our competitors have in Singapore, in America, and Europe and Israel. They've got long-term certainty about why entrepreneurs and innovators are important, and they're backed by their government. So we need the same.
Yeah, great. Well, you answered my next question, how are government faring? So thanks very much for that, Mark. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And we're here at Myriad Live. Please follow us on Beach City Life on Facebook. Make sure you share it out if you're on Facebook as well.
Yep.
And everybody that's watching, you share it too.